Just
Welcome to your awakening. Please stay calm as your reality is adjusted.
Please stay calm as we recommend you inhale your own gas. Speaking from the government's point of view, not mine. As I've mentioned multiple times in the past, don't inhale your own gas. It's not good for you. Anyway, welcome, folks. Welcome back once again. Another edition of Sol Excalibre on this moon day evening. Just gone past the 2000 hours, as is often the case. It's usually not exactly dead on 8 p.m. GMT when I get going and remember to click the button. Half the time we chatted, we were like, hey, it's 8 o'clock. It's like, oh, shit, I'll click the button and get on with it. Yes. Gold moaning, global gulag, and all that kind of stuff. You know, the usual routine: like, share, subscribe, whatever, or dislike, and whatever takes your fancy. Preferably for some reason, yeah. But anyway, let me just check everything's going. Yeah, I can see YouTube going. Hopefully, let me know in the chat if there's anything wrong, like you can't hear the audio or whatever. And I will say hello to people in the chat first before I move on. Hello, not some tuck throw. Hello, cop it, grasp it, sniff it. Yeah, don't inhale your own gas. So, Tazzy, hello, and just space goat farts. How appropriate. Hello. Yeah, well, I'll get into that in a bit. Ridiculizer, hello. And reality chat, hello. That's Pete, he's in the room. And I know Sot should be in the chat as well. He's in the room. Cardini, hello. Hope you're doing all right out in the wilderlands of the great Europa. And Dotty, hello. Hope you're well, mate. Having a good week. A new being, hello. You're also over in Europe as well. Oh, so I just got my Brexit head on, I suppose. You know, you're all off in Europa somewhere. In the continentals, whereas we're stuck here on the island full of lunatics, it seems, at the moment. And yeah, it's appropriate being Moon Day. Yeah, lunatics. Look up the etymology of it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's why we're called lunatics, supposedly, because we're all barking at the moon. Neo Dog, hello, barking at the moon. Yeah, on this Moon Day evening. Anyway, so let's get on with it without any ado. I ain't exactly got tons to say tonight, but there were some points I wanted to point at. I'm pointing at stuff, pointing at things, pointing at myself, pointing at everyone else, pointing at everyone else, pointing at me. Hang on, find my notes, scroll down to the right place, and do the usual like I usually do. There's kind of like a subtitle that's in the info box under the video. And this week, let me just check I read it out correctly, what it says on the YouTube page. 1 plus good, and don't inhale your own gas. They're not necessarily meant to be part of the same statement. You know, there's a little comma there to separate the two, but they are interrelated. And I thought about writing the first part as single plus good. Might maybe make more sense to some people if they're aware of George Orwell, Eric Blair, 1984, the novel supposed to be fiction, and in that where the people have the phrase of double plus good, and they use that to refer to anything that's a diktat of the state that the propaganda tells them they're supposed to be happy about. So they refer to it as double plus good. It's not only good, it's doubly plus good. It's amazing. Maybe in a more modern kind of slang, we'd call it mega good or uber good or something like that. But in his writing, it was double plus good. But I was thinking about it over the weekend. in reference to the now new guidelines in the UK of the 1 metre plus distance ruling, which I'm sure most people in the UK are aware of. Bojo the Clown talking about that last week, and how they are now changing the guidelines, because remember, they're not laws, they're not even legal, they're not statutes. They've tried to use the already existing statutes that are in place to do with controlling pandemics or dealing with virus outbreaks or whatever, but the current guidelines that they've been telling the public are not legal in the UK judicial system. They are based on referring to other already existing statutes. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, and many other people have pointed out quite well, a lot better than I can, because they understand the legal structure a lot better than me. And they point out that those statutes were not meant to be used in this kind of fashion where we're in a kind of medical martial law. It's almost like a soft martial law, but that in and of itself is part of the deception. But they are not legal, they're not lawful, because they extend the power of those original statutes that they're based on to such a degree that they break them. And it was Crime Budge channel that I've referred to in the past, and Tazzy's linked before a few times, that pointed out that most of the fines and other charges that have been brought based on the guidelines that the UK government has been pronouncing will more than likely get thrown out of court if people bother to challenge them. If people just go along and pay them and don't, like the squeaky wheel always gets the oil, if they don't squeak a bit about what's being done, then the government will just quite happily take the money and go, oh look, people are wanting to pay us. So it creates a justification then that the guidelines have the force of law based on consent, because the people are consenting to pay the fines that they're being issued with, rather than challenging them and saying, hang on a minute, what law is this based on? How are you fining me? Where are you getting this legal authority to charge me money from? Yes. So 1 metre plus. And it was just bouncing around in my head over the weekend. My mind was telling me there's something more about this that you haven't twigged yet, or you haven't taken notice of yet. My subconscious kept pushing it back up. And I thought, it's plausible deniability again, was the conclusion I ended up bouncing around to. And it's another example of how the politicians have been using this method of divesting responsibility to a third party so that they themselves can claim plausible deniability that it wasn't them that implemented any law or other requirement that then causes the said result, which is the medical martial law effect, and people feeling like they're being subjected to a new law that says you will be fined if you don't wear a mask in public, or you don't stay 1 meter, 2 meters away from people, etc. So when Boris started talking about 1 meter plus, and I remember we talked about it in previous weeks and questioning the well, what does he mean by 1 meter plus? Plus is anything up to infinity. So is he saying it's got to be a minimum of 1 meter, but then after that, it's whatever you want? And that's when, thinking about it again, it brought it home more of that's exactly why they said it that way. It's another example, a classic example of the use of NLP to create the illusion or allusion within the mind of the listener or receiver that they are making a free will choice, so that then the oppressor can claim plausible deniability of, oh, well, you chose to do that. So that by your choice is implicit consent, or maybe I should say tacit consent, because you don't realize what you're doing. So it's sort of tacit consent more than anything. So when he deliberately used that phrase, the way of wording it of 1 meter plus, he's giving the listener, the receiver, the impression that, well, the whatever distance beyond 1 meter is up to you. So if you're feeling so afraid, because look at all this propaganda we're throwing at you constantly, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. If you feel that, well, you know, you're not comfortable with 1 meter, you still feel that you better stay 2 meters away. You know, stay away from me, keep away, you horrible infectious people. You can do that if you want, because he said 1 meter plus. So he's giving you this sort of subconscious impetus to make that decision for yourself, which gives you the illusion of making a free will choice of, well, yeah, they're telling us 1 meter, but I believe all the fear propaganda, so therefore I'm going to stay 2 meters away, or maybe 3 or 4 or 5, or I'll just stay in my box and never go out again. And that suits them perfectly, because then by use of the third party, in other words, the media, which is just replaying the fear propaganda. And if the media ever, I'm saying the media, most of them, certainly the mainstream, what is referred to now as the mainstream, is just the outlet, the media outlet for governmental propaganda. If they ever did turn around and question and say, well, hang on a minute, you politician, we're just repeating the stuff that you tell us. We're reading out the official statements that you send to us, that you say, this is our official statement on this point. You need to present this to the public. So we're just telling the public what you tell us to tell the public, basically. We report what you tell us to report. And the majority of that, certainly a good portion of it, is that kind of fear propaganda campaign. This virus is so deadly, it's everywhere, it's going to get you, it's coming to get you, or be afraid, wear the face covering. Oh. So the government can just turn around and say, well, we just made this official statement that was backed by this other third party, these scientific think tanks that tell us this is the consensus conclusion of this academic body and what should be done. So you can't blame us, media. You can't investigate us and say it's our fault for telling the public to do this, that, or the other, because we told you these are just guidelines. But you keep pumping out that fear, because that then makes the public feel that they have to or need to follow the guidelines that we are suggesting to them. Plausible deniability. All of those politicians, and I know there's the legal get out clause of they're just working in that office and it's the office that they represent, so they can't be held personally culpable for things that are carried out within that office. For most of them, yeah. I'm sure in the chain of commands there is kind of like a cut-off level at some point where they can make that claim of we're just operating within the political office, therefore we are not personally culpable. But for the general populace, they've got no perception of that. They've got no knowledge of that in general. Certainly not the mass of the people that have been through general education and never gone into higher education, and certainly never taken any interest in how exactly the legal system works and blah, blah, blah. What's the difference between lawful and legal and stuff like that? They don't really know. They're just relying on the information that's fed to them through the media. Most of that through, the usual kind of visual media propaganda outlets. So they wouldn't get that concept. So when the government can quite happily turn around and say, oh, well, it wasn't us that forced you. We didn't say it's a legal requirement. We didn't say it is a new law that if you don't follow, you will be punished by this method, etc. No, we just said, here's the guidelines, 1 meter plus. So if you choose to absorb that fear propaganda and think that everybody in the world is suddenly so dangerously infectious that you want to keep them 10 feet away from you, which would be 3 meters, a bit over 3 meters. You've got a big, long 10-foot pole keeping everyone away from you. That's your choice. We didn't tell you you had to do that. We didn't make a law requiring you to do that. We just put out these guidelines, and with the media propaganda to give you the impression that it would be a good idea for your own health and safety to follow the guidelines, and lo and behold, you do. And in doing so, you create that consent for yet again the government to turn around and say, well, look, people are following the guidelines, and because people follow the guidelines, it proves that we're a great government, and look at how successful we've been at dealing with the problem. It obviously serves multiple purposes, but in just that point of the why did he say 1 meter plus? Because I myself questioned it, and I've heard many other people question, it's fairly ambiguous way of saying it, isn't it? 1 meter plus, what do you mean? The plus makes it so variable. It's sort of like, well, are you saying anything really other than 1 meter? And then, as I mentioned previously, most people in general social interactions stay approximately 3 feet away from each other. Even if you were into going to the pub before all the lockdown and everything, most places in a pub, you're standing there having a pint, you're chatting with your friend who stood approximately 3 feet away from you. Yeah, maybe you'll get a little bit closer if you've got a personal relationship with somebody. Yeah, that could be a close friend or something like that. But the thing is, the public in general like to have a personal space of at least 1 to 2 feet. So by the time you add that in for both parties, it approximates 3 feet between them. So Boris just described what most people do anyway by saying 1 meter, because 1 meter is approximately 3 feet. For those who, if youngsters that maybe don't know anything about imperial measurements. And then there's also the aspect which I think it was Max Egan I heard mention this. And I don't know, I debate it a little bit because it's based on measurements that could be just like an average. So maybe it isn't 100% accurate, but then I'm just being pedantic of picking through the data kind of thing. But because we are, as I've talked about many times over the years, we are electromagnetic beings. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field. Your mind is, put it simply, is an electrical circuit. Yeah, the flesh that makes up the brain, the fatty substance that's the grey matter in your skull carries the electrical signals, and your mind is the descriptive word, or the word to describe what we mean by that process of the thoughts moving around in your mind and the collection of neural clusters that act as memory and things like that. We are electromagnetic beings, and emitting that electromagnetic field around ourselves, it doesn't only go as far as the skin. Yeah, you're walking around with like a donut-shaped field, a toroidal field that emanates out of your heart. Yeah, in a spiritual sense, that's why it's referred to as the heart chakra, because it's the chakra that the field emanates out of. It's the center point of your electromagnetic field. And that, for most people, in general, in healthy people, averages a radius of around 6 feet. So when they were telling people to stay 6 feet apart, they were basically helping to reinforce the detachment between people, the sense of disassociation, of isolation. Because even though you can see and hear and speak to somebody that's 6 foot away from you, you get less of the personal interaction because of you both being stood within each other's electromagnetic field. Electromagnetic fields carry information. So when you're standing like we mostly do, like most people do, about 3 feet apart, your fields are mingling. So information from one to the other is passing backwards and forwards. For those of you that have been listening for a while and have heard me mention things about, like, capitalism is basically the description of the exchange of charge, electrical charge. Everything is an energetic field. So when we talk about the exchange of information between each other, that is, on a very basic level, the description of the principle of capitalism. We are exchanging goods with each other. It's just that those goods are bioelectrical information. And then you've got all the aspect of pheromones and bodily shedding of your general biological matter, as well as the potential of spittle and aerosolized micro amounts of vapor coming from your breath and things like that. You're exchanging stuff like that all the time. When people say you meet someone and you have chemistry, that's what they're referring to, even though it's not exactly very well defined in the general academic body. There is enough scientific evidence out there to back this up. It's just it's not a popular subject to tell the general populace, because they don't want you having this kind of comprehension, because then you would be more aware and more cautious of things that interfere with that general natural interaction between each other. If somebody explains this stuff to you, you would have more of a comprehension of why it makes a difference to you, not only biologically, because the biology affects the psychology and vice versa. It affects you psychologically, to be forced to stand further apart. And that is absolutely proven, as they like to try and Americanize things there, proven by the sheer wealth of evidence to show that total isolation is extremely detrimental for people. For almost all living beings, total isolation will lead to biological and psychological decline, eventually leading to madness, as well as complete biological breakdown in many ways. But that's the point, separated out of those energy fields of other beings, especially like beings, people to people, animals the same, animals like being around each other most of the time, most of them. But so the point being, the 1 plus good, I thought about wording it as single plus, because in the Orwellian sense it's double plus good, but he's telling us 1 meter plus, so that's 1 plus single plus good. So he's getting this single plus concept into the populace, and then they're sitting back and they're taking in the metadata, they're gathering it all up and analysing it to see how people reacting. Are they accepting it? Are they going along with it? Are they buying the fear porn? Are they reacting the way we want according to our behaviour modification nudging from our think tanks that are telling us, we need to make them more afraid. We need more personalised fear, because otherwise people won't accept having to wear a mask if they don't feel personally threatened. And we mentioned this in previous weeks, their own think tanks putting out this kind of information that the government then bases their guidelines on. And then that brings us to the don't inhale your own gas. I don't know, I worded it that way because I thought it was better just to explain the point during the broadcast rather than trying to figure out how to write it in a way that would explain it. Multiple explanations are probably needed, but the first thing is, a few weeks ago I used that exact same title because I wanted to refer to the way things were being brought back up from the past, like people were re-inhaling their own gas, their own flatulence, their mental flatulence. It's not a good idea to inhale your own farts. You might think it's a bit of a laugh, you want to find out, what does it smell like? What did I have to eat the other day? Why does it smell like that? Whatever. Silliness, every teenage kid's obsession with what their farts sound and smell like and stuff like that. But it's not really exactly a healthy thing to do. It's maybe not so bad for you to be inhaling your own because it's your own biological process. But you don't really want to be doing that to other people. It's not a good idea. But I was using that phrase then a few weeks ago to refer to stuff that had been brought back up, same kind of methodologies of how people were trying to mess around and be silly with stuff and create drama and whatever. But at the time, it wasn't exactly a major talking point or news article in reference to the having to wear masks and the risks of inhaling of your own gas, basically your own carbon dioxide, being trapped within that surface layer of the mask, and meaning that you're not getting all the oxygen that you normally would, and you're not expelling the carbon dioxide away from yourself in such a way because it's getting stuck there in front of your nose and mouth. At the time, I was using it in reference to something else, but then all this stuff started to build up. And I thought about relabeling the title of that video, but that then led me to doing this now. I thought, no, I'd rather just explain it, leave it as it is. I don't like backtracking on things that are put on the channel. That's why some of the videos are still there the way they are from years ago, because it's like, I want people to see that this is the direction I've taken. You know, this is the path I've taken, so therefore you can see where I've been and what I've been doing. I think that's an essential part of the process of knowledge and learning. You know, it's referencing where you've come from, so you know better where you're going. Check out Steve Tagoose, the Mystery Show on Thursday night. He did a great one last Thursday, and he was talking about that kind of thing. You know, the existing in the now moment, and then we can stretch our thinking one direction or the other into the past or into the future. Yeah, when we go into the past, we're revisiting memories and things like that. And when we go into the future, we're extrapolating on possibilities. We're exploring, you know, what might happen if I go over that hill over there. Oh, I haven't been down that road before. I wonder what's down there. Yeah. Using your mind in that kind of fashion to be a time traveler, stretching in and out of the moment of the now. But yeah, check that out. Check his show out, please. But in terms of when I did that prior video, I thought I don't want to go back and change the title, leave it as it is, and I'll do this explanation now. And now it has really become so much more relevant. And I think a couple of weeks ago, I made mention of the fact that sorry if people get the wrong impression from that title, but I was quite clear in the subtitle of what I was going to be talking about, and it was nothing to do with masks and the inhalation of your own carbon dioxide. But now I feel it's even more relevant because now they're starting the very steady pressure of making those guidelines seem like they are law or legal requirement. And they are positioning the social infrastructure in such a way that the majority of the populace certainly feel like they don't have any choice, or the choices that are presented to them seem very off-putting, other than the I will go along with the guidelines. You know, that's the path of least resistance that they're being presented with. If you just do as you're told, you'll be all right, you'll have a good time, you'll be allowed to go out and experience the new normal, the new abnormal. You know, you can order your pint online and go and sit in a little plastic cubicle in the pub, and they will deliver the pint to you by drone. And you can only stay for 90 minutes, and then you got to bugger off so we can sanitize your cubicle. The new abnormal. Yeah, but that principle of the wearing a mask and making the public feel like it's a almost lawful requirement. I keep going to do the bunny ears. That's that plausible deniability, the part of the dirty part, the part of the turd part, the third part. They're giving them that separation between the politicians saying, oh, we didn't make a law, it's just a guideline, folks, you can't blame us. But then in that third party position, you've got these private companies and businesses and industries and institutions that are taking those guidelines and saying, oh, the government's saying we're supposed to do this. Well, we better implement this in our business, and we will require it of the public to go along with that implementation. And if they don't, we'll refuse to serve them, or we'll call the police, and we'll, you know, create problems for them so that eventually they'll get the impression. Yeah, remember what I mentioned about path of least resistance as being presented to the populace. Go along with the guidelines, or we'll make your life exceedingly difficult. And this is just the tip, maybe a bit more than the tip of the spear, now that this has been going on for months and building up in various ways. the psyop, the different layers and narratives of the psyop. But they're certainly pushing the spear tip further in now, because this is creating the foothold of leaving the public with the impression that you don't really have a choice. You either go along with the guidelines we're saying, which includes things like you have to wear a mask, even though we're not making it a law, and we're not even being in any way specific about what we mean about a mask. In fact, we'll just use the ambiguous phrase, face covering, and say that, that's what we're telling you to wear, a face covering. What's that got anything to do with any kind of health benefit or surgical requirement or chemical standard of tolerance or resistance or nothing? There's nothing scientific about that at all. So how is that of any benefit whatsoever? And I thought it was quite appropriate today. I wondered if they'd been listening. Maybe they have. What do I want? That one, that browser. And before we get stuck in the infinity, switch to that. This was on the UK column from today's episode, today's broadcast that they did. And I thought, were they listening when I mentioned this? I think it was last week. Yeah, if you look at what they're referring to virologists working in a lab here. But even just a nurse working on a ward where people on the ward are suspected to have the so-called COVID, the corona walrus. You look at the PPE that they're required to wear, and in this case, the virologists in a lab are wearing these inflated, pressurized suits. This is what they wear to protect themselves from the potential of viral infection. Yet, what they're telling the public is, don't worry though, your bandana will work, your face covering, your totally ambiguous, nothing to do with health benefit or science at all whatsoever, that'll protect you. Yeah. Were the guys at UK column listening? If they were, thank you, or whoever it was that created that meme, thank you, because that's exactly the kind of thing I was thinking about when I mentioned that the other week. When you compare the two as a visual learning tool to demonstrate the hypocrisy and the just ambiguous craziness of what the government are telling the public, there's a really easy visual example. Look at what a nurse on a COVID ward is expected to wear as PPE, as personal protection, and then look at what they're telling the public to wear, a face covering. For a lot of people, they've either got the surgical style paper masks, or they've got one of those cloth coverings that sort of comes down under the jaw and has been trendified and fashionized and turned into another fashion statement of, yes, I like being muzzled. That's that fashion statement. It's like, yes, I like self-flagellating. Show you a t-shirt with a picture of somebody whipping themselves on it. But then during the week, we had the outbreak of the Armageddon in Bournemouth. I've got to screen share this because I just thought this was really funny. Hang on, find the right one. And they were talking about how tens of thousands of people, one estimate in one paper I saw it was saying 50,000 people turned up on the beaches in Bournemouth and were creating a potential COVID Armageddon because of they're all going to get infected because they're all bunched up together. And look at all the people on the beach, those ignorant people. Look at them all on the beach. Look, they're filling the beach. There's no distance between them, no social distance. Oh, hang on a minute. That's not a beach, is it? That's a protest in London. Oh, well, yeah, hang on. There's the beach. Oh, yeah. See the bright, colourful umbrellas, and then water and the sand and lots of sunshine and people trying to enjoy themselves and relax and soak up some vitamin D from the sun that is part of our biological processes. But that's bad. That's Armageddon. That's the end of the world. They're all going to COVID disaster. We've got to declare a national emergency. But no, that's all right, because they're all protect. Most of them have got masks on. Most of them are wearing, these kind of surgical. Can I get a zoom in on my browser, please? Can I get a zoom in? No, I won't zoom in any more than that. Most of them are wearing these kind of surgical paper masks. But then you're getting, like I described earlier, you're getting these kind of trendified fashion statement masks that are just cloth masks. Some of them have a little pocket in where you're meant to put in like a filter that's supposed to give you the chemical protection, the biological protection, but then you've also got all this cloth material. It's like wearing underpants on your face. Yeah. If you nick somebody's knickers and stick them on your head, if you're a knicker sniffer, if you put knickers on your head and go running around down the street, does that count as wearing a face covering? Can you walk around with some used knickers strapped across your face and going, yeah, I'm all right, mate. I got my face covering on. The virus can't get me. But yeah, this gathering of people with their intermittent wearing of pointless face coverings that will not protect them from the alleged pathogen that is allegedly floating around at the moment. And none of them are social distancing. They're all packed together. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's okay. And I know in many ways, just saying that ends up being appropriated into the politicized left-right argumentation of, get them to join one side or the other, get them to be in one camp or the other. They're either for the BLM or they're white nationalists, so they're automatically the anti-party. So you got to pick one side or the other and attack each other and go, oh. And I look at those images and I can guarantee that there's a lot of people there who are genuinely concerned about injustice in the world and exploitation and just simple unfairness, however they want to define it. But they've got no real concept or comprehension of what they're being dragged into, what their energy is being appropriated for, and how most of what they comprehend or understand about the problems, about the injustices, has been manipulated and deliberately created into a alleged threat that they then have to go out in the street and protest about. For many of them, certainly not all of them, because there will always be, an element in there that is nefarious in many different ways. But I don't think it would be fair to look at them and label every single one of them, stereotype them as being, they believe in the Black Lives Matter, therefore they're all wrong. They're all bad people. They're all crazy people. It's the same bullshit that they try and manipulate us with in both directions. Does it? If you say that about them, does that mean you're automatically part of the white nationalists that are supposed to be, pro-slavery and anti-black and all that kind of, stereotyping? So why are you stereotyping people on one side? But that is what the system wants us to do. They want us to be one versus the other, and they don't want you to have any knowledge or comprehension of what they mean when they say something ambiguous like face covering. They want you to just think or self-delude, to delude yourself into having a misplaced belief that a piece of cloth is going to protect you from something that in a medical setting demonstrably, hang on, I'll do screen share again just to reinforce that point, get to the right image, demonstrably is not good enough. It's just not going to do the job. Because when you are talking about it from a medical or scientific point of view, these are the lengths, these are the extents that you have to go to be protected. Sticking a pair of knickers on your face is not going to protect you from a pathogen an alleged pathogen that is supposedly floating around. And then to connect further into how, as I've been trying to describe, they don't necessarily need to create a new law or a new statute, a new legal statute to enforce the requirement of wearing masks, but they will do it via surreptitious means, by tangential means. In other words, coming at it from an angle so that it hits people unexpectedly, or it gets them from a direction that they weren't expecting. One of the announcements today was very appropriate to suit this as the example. The new head of school, head of education minister, let me see if I can find his name, Gavin Williamson. I think he's the head of something or other. Oh, no, I don't want to play him talking cack again. Comments are turned off on this video. No surprise there yet. They don't want people pointing out the stupidness and the craziness and the just downright skullduggery of this. Yeah, this was from the Telegraph earlier today, the Telegraph YouTube channel. Parents to be fined if children do not return to school, says Gavin Williamson. So, as I was explaining, they don't need to make a rule. They don't need to, well, I should be more specific. They don't need to make a law. They don't need to introduce new legislation, because instead they'll do things like this. So now all those parents out there will feel under threat of financial punishment if they don't go along with and acquiesce to what the new requirements are for the children to attend school. So they'll have to have masks, they'll have to social distance, they'll have to do all the alcohol rub on their hands, which is not good again for your biology. It's helping to create more and more superbugs. So you'll be even more under genuine threat by constant use of those kind of items, those kind of substitutes for just general cleanliness, sanitation. Your children will be required to go to school. If you don't send them, you'll get fined. So if you happen to disagree with the ambiguous guidelines of wear face coverings, and that includes the children, and you think, well, I'm not going to put my child through that trauma and potential biological damage because of there being that restriction over their face, so they're inhaling their own carbon dioxide too much, they're getting a lack of oxygen, they're getting the build-up of bacteria inside the mask, all these potential, I'm not going to send my kid into that environment, so I'm not going to send my kid to school. Oh shit, I've been fined. Why? Because your child didn't attend school. Not because they didn't wear a mask, they didn't attend school. The school requirements, it's just a guideline. Do you see how that works? That social engineering works? The government can sit back and say plausible deniability. It's a bit like that scene of Lethal Weapon. This is a throwback into 90s cultural media, entertainment media. Film with Mel Gibson in. It's a cheesy action movie, but it's one scene where the bad guy is about to escape justice, and he says diplomatic immunity to the hero characters, and Mel Gibson still shoots him anyway, because he's the cowboy superstar that gets the man and brings justice through the barrel of a gun. But the point being, the diplomat who's thinking he can get away with all the shit he's done, all the illegal criminal activity he's been done and doing by saying diplomatic immunity. And now the UK government is doing the same thing, but with that plausible deniability. It's plausible deniability. You can't get us. You can't say it's our fault. We haven't misinformed you. We've just been passing on what we've been told by our scientists, who we happen to put into position because they say exactly what we like them to say. So it suits us perfectly, but we can put all the blame on them. Or we can put all the blame on the school governor that's followed the guidelines, or the shop owner that's followed the guidelines and told all the customers they can't come in and buy stuff unless they're wearing a mask. It's not our fault as a government. No, it's those people who are all consenting to the fear propaganda, who don't bother to learn anything and consider the outright hypocrisies and craziness of them telling you to wear a face covering to protect yourself from a pathogen that in a lab they use rather extensive methods to avoid. But you can just wear a face covering, and wear a face covering. It's just a guideline. It's not a lawful requirement, but yeah, we'll tell you that. And then through tangential methods, we'll make you feel that you have to go along with it. We're not legally requiring you to, but we won't give you any choice to avoid this potential financial fine, this financial deficit to you. Economic pressure, financial social engineering, or the use of finances to socially engineer the populace. I'm going to stick in the chat as well. I haven't been keeping an eye on, maybe Tassie might have already linked this because it is a fairly good one that he put out recently. And I think people may have seen it already, but if you haven't seen it, it's from Vernon Coleman. It is about 20 minutes long, so I thought about sharing some of it, but I think I'd rather you go and listen to it for yourself, see it in context from himself, from his own words, etc. But he put up a video yesterday or the day before, I think, that's titled "Your Government Wants You Dead." And he says it quite clearly. He lays it out well to make it quite clear, simple to understand, easy to understand. No over complex scientific jargon required. He just explains it well. And he makes the point of how what we are witnessing and what a lot of the population is being forced to acquiesce to, being forced in one way or the other, not necessarily via a law, as I've explained, but in one way or the other, they're getting forced to go along with this process. And it can easily be labeled genocide. It may sound hyperbolic. And, in this social media world these days, you're not supposed to be hyperbolic. You're supposed to avoid emotion because otherwise somebody might get upset or offended or destabilized. And if you say the word yellow to some people, it sends them crazy and they have freakouts and they run around in the streets waving their tadgers at people. And it's all your fault because you said the word yellow. So you shouldn't say certain words online because they make people offended and freaked out. They have been disguising a steady process of eugenics, which is another way of saying genocide. It's just the level of death that's enacted under that process of eugenics. When it gets to a certain number, statistics, because we're all just numbers as far as they're concerned, numbers on a page, and quantity of cattle on the farm becomes genocide in the lawful definition of the word. How many people do you need to kill to be considered a genocidal war criminal? But they have been systematically working at eradicating certain elements of society. And on the back of that, creating a justification to force the majority of society, in other words, the rest that are left over, down a certain direction that is creating the basis of this technocratic I want to say fascism, but as I've explained in the past recently, it's not just fascism, it's not just communism, it is beyond both. It is outright tyranny. Tyranny can quite happily use one political costume or the other. It doesn't care as long as it's still perpetuating its tyranny. And another example of how that process is being pushed through the media is now that this mask question has been brought forward even more so because they're creating this impression that masks need to be worn all over the place, and so many businesses and institutions are implementing requirements of masks before you can enter their buildings or whatever. It even got to the stage where the fact-checking websites were tasked to put out articles talking about how if you question it's just face covering versus medically proven, scientifically proven protection from a potential pathogen, then that's false, according to the fact-checking websites. If you point out the total hypocrisy and lack of any credible, logical, reasoned argument or evidence, no, that's false, which proves that those fact-checking sites have been either appropriated or outright created from the start to serve political agendas and narratives. They are not organic, they are not genuine, they are not honest. Oh, sorry, Gary. Thanks for joining, Gary. Sorry I've been rambling so long. It was nearly finished as well, but thanks for joining us, mate. I see you again Wednesday. They're not honest. And the one I looked at was on PolitiFact. The site itself is called PolitiFact, which when I thought about it, I thought, yes, you are. You are taking facts and you are trying to spin them or manipulate them to suit politics. So it's disingenuous, but it's accurate to call your site PolitiFact, because you're not genuine facts. You are politicized facts. So you deliberately take obvious evidence and try and spin it and say that, oh no, there's nothing to see here, folks. Don't worry about it. Just wear your cloth bandana. That's good enough for you. That's the extent that we've got to now, where they are implementing that level of behavioral modification, because that's what it is. That's what it amounts to. That's what they're basing their methods on, is the information from their think tanks and institutions that are advising them on how to manipulate the public, on how to generate certain consensus reactions from the populace so that the political agenda can keep stepping forwards. And it reminded me of an old sort of anecdote, it's a fictional anecdote, but it's something that I think, in the past I heard it from the point of view of when, making arguments about capitalism. But I think it suits in this recent debacle as well, and certainly at the moment, while they're still trying to push the black versus white paradigm narrative into the public consciousness, and we've got all the protests happening. So there's three people sat round the table. An elite, one of the politicians or the controllers, the usurpers, the bloodlines, the families, the whatever you want to label them as, but they're one of those people that are the people pressing the buttons and pulling the levers. And there's two just normal, ordinary people, one black, one white, and they're sat around this table. In the middle of the table is a plate with 12 biscuits on it. And the rich guy, the elite guy, the Illuminati guy, takes 11 of the biscuits. And then he says to the other two guys, he says, that guy there is trying to steal your biscuit. In other words, they take most of what is produced by the world's population, or they try to take as much as they can, never give it back, pirate code. But they then tell the people who are arguing over whatever's left is the other guy's coming for your share. Yeah. The black guy, they tell the black guy, oh, the white guy's trying to steal your biscuit. Meanwhile, they're making off with the 11 other biscuits. I deliberately chose the number 12 and 11. Yeah, there is reasons for that. I know it's a bit of a simplistic anecdote, but it is what they are doing at the moment on multiple levels, using different vectors of attack. Certainly for the last few weeks, it's been about black versus white and the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that. And we've spoken about that. I've spoken about how they want everybody to have an enemy so that they can have you divided into those two dualistic camps, because then they can play this seesaw game of setting you against each other. And that generates energy that keeps the system moving in a direction that they want. If they tell you what a particular enemy is trying to push you in one direction, they want you to go the other direction. So if they tell you the communists are coming to get you, a large number of people will go to the right of that political spectrum. So there'll be more conservatives, more nationalists and things like that, which is where they actually want people. If they wanted people to be communists, they'd tell you the fascists are coming to take over, and that everybody's a fascist, everybody's a conservative, everybody's a nationalist, and then a large number of people would want to be the opposite to that because they've been entrained into this seesaw process, this left-right paradigm. So yeah, don't let them steal all the biscuits. They've had plenty of biscuits. It's about time you kept some of your biscuits for yourself. And on that one last point, I'll just add in, I saw it this afternoon and I just saw it even more so. It made me want to keep that in my notes because I'd put it in before I saw this. So it wasn't exactly an article, it was just a little video clip of Bojo the Clown in a radio interview. And it's now, modern age, it's not just radio, people are there videoing it and it gets published on a visual media as well as broadcaster radio. But he's there giving the kind of radio interview, and he makes his statement to how Brits are fat. We're the fattest nation in Europe, according to Boris. The Brits are fatter than most Europeans, except the Maltese, which he wanted to, put in there for some reason. The Maltese are fatter than the Brits, but yeah, we're too fat, according to Boris. And I looked at him, and he's got his hair all scruffed up like he often has, especially when he's trying to play that narrative game of just talk about any old bullshit and bamboozle people with just flubbity blubbity blah, talk about the bus, oh, you like my painting of the bus, the cardboard bus I made, all that kind of stupidness. And him just sat there in his chubby self talking about how Brits are fatter than the rest of Europe. And it just, like I say, it just cemented in my mind that, I'll mention the 12 biscuits thing. Or the fat guy stealing all the biscuits and then telling you that the other guy's coming for your share. Boris, you can't sit there and make statements about how the Brits are fatter than the rest of Europe when you're not, you're not exactly the pillar of physical health, are you?
No, he is not, Cookie. He is one. I've got an image here I'm going to share. You have to share this image because just what you're talking about. It's been in the news, and it's just pure comedy, in my opinion. Let me just get the right screen on. There we go. That one there. Boris does press-ups. We've seen that. I'm sure other people have seen this. Says he's fit as a butcher's dog and proves it. Gets on the floor and starts doing press-ups. Oh, well, there you go.
Is that because you've been feeding on gammon? Fit as a butcher's dog, he's been having a slice of gammon every day.
Yes, but it's, Boris is, oops, let's just stop that.
Change the screen back.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, take it off again. Yeah, I'm getting all confused with that because I'm not presenting. It's weird how it works the other way. Sorry, have you finished? So I've just butted in there. I don't know if you'd.
No. So well, that was. Although it's just a bit of comedy extra. It's like the "and finally" story. Is what's Bojo the Clown said stupid today? So talking about Brits being too fat and whatever. Meanwhile, they're making announcements about things like if you don't send your kids back to school in September, you're going to get fined. Shit like that. Don't look at this hand. Look at this hand. This hand's far funnier. Look at the silly hair. Oh.
Well, the schools collect money, don't they, for each child that goes to school?
The way it works now,
which Taz mentioned in the chat as well. So they want you to go back now because they're feeling the pinch. So they need to get more cash in for themselves. But that fact checker stuff, I mean, misinformed or what, or like you say, not honest, completely misleading, reading, like we mentioned last week, reading stories from the BBC, complete denying Bill Gates as a dodgy man and being involved in very dodgy vaccine trials that, were documented and, back in the day. In the 90s and stuff, and that's now completely denied. That's because the fact checkers say so, and we know that was complete bullshit. And like you say, with political facts, that's just going to spin that out. And let's just hope people see through these nonsense of fact checkers. I haven't come across them myself. I mean, maybe it's just I
I
just
just
know it's
don't
all
bother
bullshit online.
I don't bother looking at
Yeah.
their sites, and most of the time, the places you'll encounter them is on other social media platforms such as Fartbook and Twigger.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really see it mentioned much on YouTube unless a content creator is pointing at them deliberately. You know?
But yeah, that incident in Bournemouth, it was declared a major incident on Saturday because everybody went to the beach. Oh my God! It's like,
I was disappointed just in the sense of the sheer amount of litter that people left. Which, you know, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, you know, people are people. They're going to be dragging stuff with them, and some of them are the kind of people that will just dump their litter wherever.
Yeah.
But there's also the added reality to the current situation, the new abnormal, that all the public loos would have been closed. A lot of the shops along the beachfront would have been closed, restaurants would have been closed, and things like that. So what choices were left to the people who did go to the beach other than having to take a load of stuff with them, you know, supplies, as it were, food and water and whatever, and then what do they do with them at the end of the day?
Yeah.
That's a bit unfortunate in that respect, but it's to
it's a
declare
reaction.
it a major incident is just
that's the language they use. Like you were saying before, the headline of the major incident. Just two words. They just use one word or two words to describe the people not following the guidelines. Yeah, which is what they are.
I've just remembered now, I didn't actually mention it at the time when I meant to in my polemic monologue. I just jumped back on myself a second, point this out. I'll just do a screen share just so you can see the title of it and whatever, because I'm not going to play it. It doesn't really matter in the sense of what he says isn't exactly anything, very explanatory. He's just making the point that the people in Leicester, this is the mayor. Leicester mayor says more evidence needed over government's proposed lockdown extension. This is from the Evening Standard, their YouTube channel for the Evening Standard. But this is because in the past few days, there's been mention in the media of how there's going to be a local shutdown, a local lockdown on Leicester because they've got a spike of cases. They've got more cases than elsewhere. Therefore, they shouldn't be allowed out of lockdown yet. When the rest of us are now being released from house arrest. But they're making this point of how Leicester is not going to be released or shouldn't be. And I meant to mention this because in reference to the declaring Bournemouth a major incident, if it's accepted that it was a major incident, that's not just hyperbole. That's not just statements, just to describe something. Those words, that phrase actually has legal standing. Which means the local council will be able to take certain actions. The local police will have more powers available to them. The government will have more powers available to them if it is declared as an incident. Because it's like, when there's a major natural catastrophe and they declare a major incident, that gives them the sort of extra authorities to do things like shipping in supplies or controlling the movement of people in and out of that area. Supposedly to protect you from the potential danger of, say, a major landslide or something like that. They're doing it to supposedly protect you. But this is exactly the point that they're trying to slip in. And I mentioned this ages ago. I know, we had a quick chat about it before we started tonight because I did mean to mention this while I was rambling. But a while ago, they made the claim that because the NHS had been incapable of providing the number of tests needed to actually deal with the scandemic bullshit, that they were going to bring in the military so that the military will start manning the test stations so that they could do the sheer number of tests that they said they needed to be able to control the scandemic. And I explained at the time that that was just an excuse to get the populace used to having the police on the street, the military, sorry, on the streets and stationed, ensconced in your environment, in your neighborhood, and that you all accept it because you've been told the justification is because of the danger of the pandemic, the pathogen. But that's creating a legal precedent. And at the same time, if they declare a major incident, that's the same kind of thing. Yeah, it gives them more legal precedence to do certain things. It also, when it comes to this current story, and this now is where bringing up to date more of what I said several weeks ago, I think it was, when I pointed this out. By starting this process, they're getting the public used to the idea that certain areas can be isolated, can be locked down. So Leicester can be locked down, which means there would need to be a cordon around the environs that they declare, however much of Leicester, whether it's just the centre or all of the suburbs, whatever. There would have to be a cordon around Leicester to control or monitor the movement of people and goods in and out, so that they could monitor and track the risk, allegedly, of the crown walrus. So by putting this out now, combined with the fact that they haven't said they're taking the military off their testing duties, that means there would be military testing stations at the entrances and exits in and out of Leicester, so that they could monitor whether the virus was escaping from the quarantine zone that Leicester has been declared as. Do you see what I mean about how this is getting the public ready for the method of locking down areas, which could be just one neighborhood, one street, or it could be an entire city or an entire borough. So they lock down the entire region, the county of Leicester, rather than just the city. This is going to get people ready for the real martial law. Maybe I should say the more clearly defined martial law rather than real, because what we've been through at the moment is martial law. It's just been disguised as medical reasons. Now this is getting ready for it's not going to be necessarily a countrywide ban, because we want certain functions of the nation to still carry on. For example, generating revenue off the populace, which means the populace still needs to be going to work and creating that cycle for the economic wheels to turn, etc. But they want to be able to have control over where that economic process takes place or not. So if an area has a concentration of rebellious population who call out the bullshit and are not obeying and try to start securing their own neighborhood, think of all the things like the Black Lives Matter, the defund the police campaign, or this is all part of this same narrative building. To give them the justification to just put a label on that area and say, oh, COVID, it's a COVID outbreak, they're having a spike, so we've got to lock them down. That part of your town could suddenly be put onto quarantine, and you're either not going to be able to go into that area anymore, or you're going to be stuck inside it if you're in that place that's been quarantined. And it will be militarily quarantined, not NHS happy clappy doing TikTok dances on the corner of your street. No, it will be guys in uniform who will be backed up by firearms and equipment to make sure you don't leave if that's what they say you're required to do. But it's disguised as, oh, we care about the people of Leicester, so, we don't think they should come out of lockdown. Right? Is this the beginning of creating a precedent in people's thinking?
Yeah.
So that in the near future, when they say that street down the road from you is under quarantine, people just go, oh yeah, the danger of the COVID, all the phantom menace coming to get us.
Well, it's slowly drip feeding, because this is the second one, because Anglesey was mentioned last week, the island of Anglesey. Yeah, that there was a potential that could shut down the island because they'd had 158 cases of positive workers who worked in a food processing place, chicken place.
I know this might sound a little bit of a tangent, but I wonder if it's got anything to do with the Irish backstop. because Anglesey is one of the closest parts of the British Isles to Ireland. Even though Ireland is part of the British Isles, but I'm not trying to appropriate their sovereignty or anything. I'm just talking about the geological closeness, geographical, I should say, the geographical closeness of Anglesey to Ireland.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's
they're
not far. That's where you get the ferry across from there.
maybe there's a lot of that kind of trade transport that comes between the two. Sorry, I think I just swallowed off beard.
No, it's just interesting, I
imagine-
thought, because there's also the
the-
nuclear power station getting rebuilt there. There's a huge contract that even Trump's now getting involved with because they put it on hold. And because it was a Japanese firm, Hitachi, who originally were going to build a new nuclear power station on the island. This huge complex was going to.
They make fridges and stuff like that.
Well, lots of other things as well, yeah. And they run out of money, or there was no funding coming from the UK government. Theresa May decided to block it and not give them the money to go forward with the project because they were looking for billions or whatever it was, and they just put the project on freeze. Now Trump's stepping in because China are sniffing around. Yeah, they want to maybe get a piece of the action. And he's told the Japanese not to be involved, and I think either he's getting involved in some way, shape, or form to bring this project alive again, and that will bring in a huge amount of money to that island, or investment, or whatever, or work, and all the rest of it.
Is there a trade docks on Anglesey? I know there's the public commercial docks, as in for passenger craft and whatever.
Holyhead is commercial. Just I'm not sure if there's anything else. There might be. I'm not sure.
In the chat, Holyhead as well.
Yeah.
That does make me wonder because the Chinese in recent decades had become notorious for buying up ports.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
It's been part of the globalization process of them appropriating the international trade network. And for a lot of countries, the claim was that they couldn't financially support their ports anymore. So these outside buyers come in who are Chinese, and they buy up all the ports. Yeah, so it makes me wonder if that's part of the connection there with the Irish backstop. And if Anglesey's a major trade port as well, possibly to Ireland, that could be a reason why they were suggesting that Anglesea's another spike danger case, and we got to look at this meat factory that needs shutting down. Yeah.
But again, using it like in this other one with Leicester, which town's next, or city even, which area is going to have a spike suddenly? And, I mentioned last Wednesday, it's funny, it's all around food processing plants, it seems. Whether that's just something, maybe it does, whatever they've put out there does live on meat or something, or raw meat better, and it can survive. I don't know, whatever the hell it is, whether it exists at all, or it's just all, like I say, the testing is dubious. When they test positive or negative, we don't know what that is saying. Really, or they just had flu 2 years ago, or did they get something more recently? It doesn't give you that. It doesn't give you that difference. So it's a very sort of grey area, and people are going there thinking, "Yeah, I had COVID. Yeah, I had it," but the test is actually not telling you that.
No, not most of what they're doing on the public.
No.
Some of a small percentage of the lab tests are searching for more specific information from the samples, but the majority of the tests that they're rolling out and the things they're doing at those military test stops is the kind of test that just looks for the antibodies.
Yeah.
And that's why you've got around 80% supposedly false positive rates, because it detects antibodies to coronavirus, which 99.9% of us have, because we've all had a cold or a flu at some point in our lives. Well, there might be a small number of people that have avoided that, but the majority of us have all experienced it at some point. So we have those antibodies in our system. So they can easily, just detect that and then say, "Oh, look, you got the COVID." You get
just like they've done with the numbers, the actual death numbers, and who died of it and who died of what. Very confusing and not making sense. So
I think they're using their own information, or the information that they put out as official statements and official information on the alleged illness itself, the pathogen itself.
Yeah.
They do not stand up to logical questioning and reasoning. They just don't. Yeah, and we've talked about this all along. You know, there are quite a few people out there with a lot of experience and knowledge and qualifications and whatever that looked at this situation and said that it just doesn't add up. If what they're claiming, you know, if you try and work from what they claim about this stuff, then it just doesn't follow. You know, it doesn't add up logically.
No.
And part of that is this claim that, or this impression that they're giving the public, that this stuff is just like floating around in the air all around us constantly, like it's a mist, like a fog that's in the air all the time. So you're constantly under this worry, which is why they're saying you got to wear a mask, yeah, because this stuff could be coming at you from anywhere, yeah. So I feel anyway, that's the impression they're giving most of the public.
Yeah.
But the reality of viruses, according to all the scientific medical information, it wouldn't work like that. The viruses cannot exist in the environment on that kind of long-term basis like they're a bacterium. Yeah, bacterium is a living organism. It's got all the bits in it required to be a cellular organism, whereas viruses don't. So they can't survive for long periods of time and hang around in the air like a thug that can come and get you at any moment. So that brings us back to the only way it can be spreading is by people who have it, who are acting as carriers and pass it from one to another. So the best way to deal with that kind of viral infection is identify those that are sick and isolate them from the general populace. You know, this is sort of like standard that we talked about before. It's like when I made the point about how whenever there's been a bad flu outbreak, we didn't lock down the country, did we? No, we just helped the people who were sick, but we sort of kept them separated from the rest of the population so they didn't spread the illness. But the impression they're giving everyone is like this stuff is everywhere on everything. You know, it's in the meat, it's on the packaging in the supermarkets, you know, on the stuff you buy. So you're supposed to wipe it down with antibacterial. That is just, it's nonsensical.
Yeah. And also in the household as well, have you been around anyone who's had flu? I've had flu, but I've been around someone who's had flu and you don't get it.
Yeah, not necessarily.
You're in the same house, using the same things. I think it's just something that is you can't predict it. So it's almost like the war against terror, isn't it? You know, the same bullshit. You know, it's like, come on, you can't.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Because
I
was thinking along similar lines. I think it was yesterday. Right, when we had the war of terror, or I say when we had it, I know they're still trying to perpetuate this, and in the recent events that have been in the news in the UK of stabbings, you know, they've immediately appropriated them and tried to turn them into terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
You know, these amazingly successful terrorists that could kill thousands of people in one go, yet they choose to go running down the street trying to stab people randomly. You know, that's not. But anyway, whatever. Now brain farted. Yes,
it's not. It wasn't. Yeah, go on.
To the war of terror. They had the phantom menace of the ISIS boogeyman living under your bed who's about to jump out and stab you at any minute or behead you. Yeah. Now, that was, at least to a certain degree, physically tangible, even though, as I often use the phrase, it was a phantom menace because they wanted people to feel like their next door neighbor could be crazy ISIS jihadist who's going to get them. But it was still referring to a tangible physical thing, a person, wearing a hood and with a knife and all that shit. Now they've converted that to a completely phantasmal menace. You can't see the virus, you can't smell it, you can't touch it. Invisible. Really, not like in the sense of, oh, look, I found the virus. Yeah, it's completely invisible, basically. Yeah. So the war of terror has gone from a semi-visible enemy. You know, he's just hiding in the shadows, but he is an actual physical thing that you could see if you turn the light on. But now this thing is like, it doesn't matter how many lights you got turned on, you still can't see it. But you got to be afraid. It's the ultimate terrorizing enemy. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm still seeing people driving in their cars on their own, wearing a mask. So,
For
Cookie
whoever
doesn't
made
get
the
any more
meme,
crazy than that. Yeah, sorry, Cookie.
for whoever, if they did, I'm just guessing, but if somebody did hear me say about the nurses wearing PPE as a meme, then please do the same for the people driving cars with masks on. Somebody please make a meme about that. This is the craziness of 2020. People on their own in a car with a mask on. It's just so, to me, that's mind blowing. It's like, are you really? What are you thinking?
Well, it can get you.
Are you
Cookie.
thinking?
It is the virus mist. It's gonna come. It's not over there, but it's over here. It might be in Tesco's, but it's not in Marks and Spencer's or whatever. Or it might not be in an open air market, which they're not allowed to have, but you can have it in you can meet in closed spaces and shop because they're corporate buildings. They need to make money. So we have to keep them going. It's,
you can't get your hair cut, but you can hand goods to a cashier who will then hand them back to you after they've scanned them. So you're getting constant exchange, as well as the person who stacked them on the shelf in the first place, as well as the person who put them in the boxes when they were shipped to but you can't have your hair cut.
Yeah, it's sending people a bit crazy. I mean, there was a guy in the supermarket the other day when I went down there over the weekend, and just in front of me, and because they're a bit militant on the door as you're going in, wait, and then they don't force you now to wash your hands. There was some guys there forcing you. You've got to wash your hands before you go in, and you don't have to do that. I never did that. I just walk in, but that's how militant they were getting on to let you into the, to go and get your food. And there was a guy in front of me, and he was saying he was having a bit of a sort of rant and saying, yeah, it's ridiculous, and he was with his family as well, and and then you could tell he was looking into stuff, and he'd been there's people waking up. There is a awakening happening in the sense of people can see through this madness, at least this madness, and then there's awakening in yourself as well occurring at the same time. That's what you've got to remember. You're waking up too, because you're waking up to the nonsense. You're seeing it for real life now. It's right in front of your face. You can't avoid it. It's there. Wherever you go now, out in public, you're going to come across someone trying to tell you what to do and trying to put in these silly, let's walk this way, let's walk that way, like, traffic laws for pedestrians, as you're out and about. You can't walk that way. You got to walk crazy. So, yeah,
I didn't exactly had to, but I chose to go into the Aldi near me because I was on my way back home, and I thought I forgot I need a bag of sugar. I better go. Yeah, the deadly white stuff. And Aldi was there. I thought I'll go in there and see what it's like, and I can just grab a bag of sugar in there. And the way they've set it up is they've got traffic lights over the entrance. Yeah, it's red and green. If it's red, there's already people in the shop, so you can't go in. If it's green, you can go in. Yeah. And I went in, and the only other thing they'd done is they got the stripes on the floor to mark distance, and they got the plastic shield in front of the cashier. Yeah, that's it. And I walked in, and there was more workers in there on the shop floor than there were customers. And the workers were doing like they do in that kind of shop, in that kind of store. They're pushing around pallets of stuff, and they're stacking shelves and whatever. And they were all intermingling totally, no social distancing, which I'm cool with, but I'm talking about how it represents of the companies following the bullshit guidelines. Yeah, the workers in there were just getting on with their day, getting on with their jobs. They weren't social distancing. None of them were wearing masks. But the store, the policy for the store is childish, infantile traffic light system over the front door.
It's crazy. And then when you actually get into the store, which is what was funny, you actually got in there, and then me and this guy were talking, and then there's other people milling around literally right next to you, moving in and looking at the aisles and looking at whatever. And he said, look at it, it's madness, isn't it? I said, I know, I totally agree with you, because he was having a bit of I think he was getting a bit angry about it and a bit frustrated. So, and then I see him later on in the supermarket talking to somebody else. So he seemed to be on this, can't you see this, and trying to, make people see it. But sometimes that can be a bit too much as well. It tends to be, can send you a bit sort of, it's like They Live, isn't it? We've mentioned that many times, you can see it, all of a sudden see it, and you're like, can't you see it? Can't you see it? And you try and sort of make people see things. And sometimes that's not a good thing. You've got to sometimes look at the the gentle thing and wake and people are seeing it, but when they see people like myself. I mean, on the bus today, the driver was being a bit shitty again, getting on with the mask, and I wasn't wearing mine, and he looked around and said, "You're not wearing it." And I said, "No, I don't want to. I can't breathe with it on." And it's like they still question you. This is in the morning, it's like you haven't even got to work yet, and you're already dealing with the shit that they're putting before you to try and get to do your normal thing in the day. They're making it like in your face, literally, with the mask on.
I really, really want it to become a trend, culture jamming visual meme of people wearing knickers on their head, because I don't want to speak about my past, but if you put knickers on your head and pull them right down, the leg holes become eye holes, and the gusset goes perfectly over your nose and mouth. Yeah. So the government just says face coverings. So the bus driver couldn't complain at you, mate. Just do that. Get on the bus with a pair of knickers on your face. Let's see what he says there. "Oh, you wearing a mask today?" Like, yeah, it smells great, mate.
You look like a 70s bank robber when you,
That you could do as well. A pair of tights like 70s bank robber. Just stick that over you. It's a face covering.
Yeah, in them days you get 10 years for that. Now they're encouraging you to, cover up and do daft shit. And oh man, you did mention the chakra system before. I got a little image there if you want to just to give people what they, it's just an understanding of that really a little bit more. If you want to have a look at that, that's your energy system. And yeah, the crown at the top. They got it as purple, or lilac. I mean, it's a different. It's how some show it slightly different, but I always think that's white at the top as well, because I've got one with the crown chakra as well. But the crown they're trying to hijack off you. Let me just stop that and start the other one, because I was trying to do the other screen share, but because it wasn't working right, it kept flicking off. It did say it would have trouble with Chrome before I did it on here. It says we have trouble with Chrome on here. Go to Firefox instead. I thought, oh, fuck off. Anyway. So, there you go. That's the crown. I mean, that's sort of the lotus petals, isn't it, or whatever? And that's your energy you can't see, or you can feel that if you tune into that. Certainly the system I showed you before, you can go to different areas of your body, and the chakra system itself, it sort of locks you in. If you look at where I'll get that other image up again, where you are in the lower chakras, which is where they want to keep your cookie, isn't it? In that lower space down there. Let me just get that image up again, because I want to show that one. I'm trying to bloody mess about with this thing tonight. It's a pain. Anyway, that's the crown one again. It's the same rod. Hang on, I'll do it again.
Change tab.
Yeah, I'll change the tab. There we go. Share it. That's it. That's the one again. Yeah, they keep you in this lower area here, the red, the orange, and the yellow, those three areas there. That's energetically where most people are on the planet right now. Most people are moving into the heart, which is where the real awakening starts to happen. And then you can vocalize that through the blue, which is through your throat. And then as you third eye begins to properly open, and then having even more at the top there, where the energy flooding in from the universe right down to that root chakra. Oops, there we go. Which is the red one at the bottom, and that's that like clear connection from the ground to the universe right through, because we're energy, as we say. And that if you think this is all just nonsense, well, Carillion photography, other things, other images, other things, you can see this energy. It's there, exists. And there's an energy system running right throughout our bodies, plus the planet you're standing on, the Earth, Mother Earth, Gaia. Yeah, all the energy on that. How do you think we're still here and we live on this planet, grows our food and does wonderful things, and all the rest of it? But that's what people need to start to get their heads around, this stuff, because that's your connection back, and that's where they don't want you to know this stuff. They want you to keep you locked in those three lower chakras, your sexual chakra, mainly that one as well, because they use sex a lot, the orange there. See,
Who
that's
else uses a lot of orange? Look up the House of Orange and the use of orange by the different secret societies and occultic clubs and whatever you want to call them.
And there's some good information out there. There are some dodgy videos or YouTube vids, but you know, I'm sure if you were looking into this a bit more, you can find more about it, and you know how you can connect with yourself better and stuff like that. Because that's what they're trying to stop you doing, really. And everything's external, everything's out here.
The green as well is the
heart,
the reflection of the external. For you know, you could have a debate about other creatures that see the light spectrum different to us. You know, there are some animals that see a different level of the spectrum and things like that. But for us, green is the dominant color in our world environment. So I don't think it's coincidental that the ancients put green as the color for the heart chakra, because the inner world reflects the outer world.
Yeah.
And at the moment, the green agenda is primarily about appropriating people's energy and misdirecting it so that they feel that they're making a choice that aids the planet, because, you know, the planet's under threat from us humans because of climate change and all this kind of crap. You know, that's that green energy. The planet is a green energy, basically. Yeah. So they're trying to, as people's energy is rising up through their chakra, when it gets to that green level, the heart chakra, they start becoming more self-aware, and in doing so, they become more aware of their natural environment and their part within it. And that's when the government, or I shouldn't really say the government because it's above the government, that's when the usurpers, step in and try to appropriate that energy and misdirect it into things such as the green agenda narrative.
I was going to say,
you got this sense of wanting to care for your own health, for your own well-being, for the well-being of your family, and for the well-being of your environment which you exist within. Yeah. There would be no you or your family without the environment that you exist within. So you have that sense and that need of care. So then there is that middleman usurper to go, oh yeah, we'll tell you how to do it. You got to do things like no longer drive petrol cars, no longer fly on jets, no longer go on holiday, no longer do this, that, and the other. Do you see what I mean about how when you get to that stage of development of sensing that green energy, your own heart Merkaba, your own heart chakra is beginning to align and wake up and energize. And that's when you get that sense of inner self. And you maybe, I think, you know, maybe this is a bit of a generalization, but I think for most people, when they start to get to that stage, they are making good progress on their own path of self-development, because they're starting to become self-aware. And that's needed before you can really progress further, if that makes sense. Yeah?
Well, yeah, exactly.
The lack of self-awareness and self-knowledge is going to prevent you from progressing.
That blocks you.
Prevent you from progressing above your carnal desires, which are epitomized by those lower chakras.
Yeah.
Your belly and your groin. Yeah.
Yeah.
The desire to consume things and shag things, basically. That's your carnal physical desires.
Yes.
You can sate those desires, but then you've got the potential of gluttony and greed, etc., which is why your development is about rising above the lust of those desires and saying, no, I can control them. I am in charge, not my physical self. I know how to look after my body. I know how to serve my body to be healthy, but I'm not. I am not just my body. There is more to me than just the physical self, which is when you progress further up.
Yeah. And do you know what else in that? When you move through to the yellow, which is your stomach area or whatever, the ego resides in there.
Yeah.
And it's funny how people with a large stomach tend to have a big ego. Not everybody, but a lot I may have, you know, large ego. And that area is very vulnerable. You know, if you're very much big ego, you tend to, be where you're out of balance, and the area there can really, and people get stuck there. That's where they're stuck, and men, especially males, because males have to move into that green area. That's where that's where we come into ourselves, the male and the female as well, but more they keep the male locked down in those three, deliberately locked there, and then don't move them into the heart, because that's where we do our best work on the planet. But the keepers denied that, and that's why I've been saying for years and years and years, work with that green first, move up, deal with all that shit, and then move into your heart. Yeah. And then that's how you do it slowly. You're not going to blow up your kundalini. You're going to go mad and it's going to explode into the universe. You're just doing it in a slow, measurable way where you're dealing with your shit day by day. Yeah. And then you move into the green. And then once you move into the green, the rest then opens up, and it opens up in a slow, nice, gentle way, which, a lot of new age stuff wants to open you up straight away. Bang, woo, energy flying through the roof. And then you don't know where the fuck you are. You have and I suppose many people who've done this type of work and would know what I'm talking about. You've got to do it in a slow, gentle way. And, that's how you then come into your own and come into yourself. And then you can deal with the shit in front of you properly. It's so, that's how it works. It's not something you can do overnight, this shit. It's a question of looking in the mirror, dealing with stuff. And then you wouldn't want to run out and do all the crazy stuff I'm seeing people do, think, because they're just running with the narratives, running with the external, not coming back to themselves. And that's where you start with you. And we've said that so many times on here. Well, I have anyway. So, yeah, that's how it works.
That central chakra as well, the green chakra. I'm just speaking from my own interpretations of stuff I've looked at about this kind of thing over the years. My own contemplation on it. Other people may have pointed this out before that I don't know about, so it's not like I'm quoting anyone. But that central chakra acts as the fulcrum. I've explained before how your physical body processes things in a downwards motion. Yeah, I know we've got to take into account the 4-dimensional reality. You're living in a 3-dimensional physical reality that is subject to time being the 4th dimension. So we exist in this reality by processing things downwards. We ingest them because we're bipedal, obviously upright bipedal. We ingest them and they go down, and our biology is adapted to make use of the gravity in our environment. You can argue over what gravity is amongst yourselves, but we've adapted to make use of it to process the things that we ingest. So physical existence goes through that downward process. It draws downwards, and we ingest the food to sustain ourselves, and we excrete downwards whatever is left over. Your energetic body goes the opposite direction. That physical sense represents those 3 lower chakras. The things that you are ingesting, which is why I sort of butted in a bit and mentioned the yellow chakra representing the lungs as well, because it's where you're inhaling the gaseous part of the element that you rely on. But your spiritual processing, you're ingesting energetic and spiritual food through your experiences and your relationships and your observations of this reality. You are ingesting energetic and spiritual food, and that is processed upwards through those 3 higher chakras. And the heart in the center, the green chakra, is that fulcrum point. And I think, don't change the image now, but one of the images you showed earlier, the lotus flower, and there's sort of on that image, there's the, sort of lotus flower diagram or pictograph in the background.
Yeah.
That's the lotus flower image. Is if you were looking down on the toroidal energy field that we generate, like I mentioned earlier, the EM field that your heart generates, the heart chakra being the center, the point that the field generates from. If you look down vertically on that, you would see that kind of lotus shape of the toroidal field. And in the middle of it would be something that would be more than likely a hexagonal shape. Refer to the images from Saturn of the hexagonal shape at the poles. That demonstrates exactly perfectly that toroidal field of energy that In that reference, he's on Saturn, but in the same relation, correlating to our EM field, it's the same thing for us. Yeah, the lotus flower was the symbolic way that the ancients represented that. And remember, I explained ages ago, we was talking about this kind of thing. Your toroidal field has two directions of spin from the center. Yeah, as you go vertically up the pole of that toroidal field, the upper hemisphere spins one direction, the lower hemisphere spins the other. Yeah, think of the Earth's planetary field and how the two hemispheres go in opposite directions, the Coriolis effect.
Yeah.
So again, in the same manner of that EM field generation, the heart chakra acts as the center point, as the fulcrum. The energy that's going downwards, your physical self, your ingesting of physical stuff to sustain your biological body, processes downwards, and it goes one particular direction in that spiral downwards. Your energetic food is ingested through your senses and your experiences, and etc., and is processed upwards, going in a opposite direction, a counter direction to the downward force. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that green, again, it's that green energy connection of the inner and outer world. This is why green is so encoded in throughout mythology from all over the world, as being that kind of center point. It's the point of balance. It's the center. It's the chakra. It's the what's the other word now? It's brain farting. It's escaping me. But I think you get the point.
Yeah.
The two different directions of force, of the flow of the force, that is your EM field, the electromagnetic toroidal field that you generate.
Yeah.
One the top half, one hemisphere is going one direction, and the bottom half is going the other direction. And it represents the difference, or the I shouldn't say the difference, because they act in unison, so they are one thing that is split into a duality. Just like all of existence, it begins as a singularity, and the first step in the process of development is the duality.
Yeah.
So your physical self processes one direction, and your spiritual self processes the other direction. You take in information or experience, you process it like a nutrient, you keep the good stuff, and you excrete the shit. And how do you do that? You do it by, you take it in the heart initially, and you process it upwards, and in the throat chakra, you can expel verbally all the angst and anger and frustration and whatever you're feeling, or sadness or whatever about a situation. And it's processed through your crown chakra to decide, well, actually, I can learn from this in some manner, and I can see how life perpetuates beyond this experience. So therefore, I process the detritus, the excretia. I get rid of that excretia through that thought process, and I can vent it a little bit by shouting about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, that works as well in terms of good stuff. You can pronounce how great something made you feel, but that throat chakra gives you the ability of putting into this reality your own sense of self and experience.
Yeah. And if you've done the work with the heart, as you move through those red, orange, and yellow, and then that should be the good stuff coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
If you've done the correct work, or you've done it right.
If you are,
or you're just spouting like confused shit or madness or whatever. I don't know.
But this is why a lot of the teachings, a lot of different belief systems, different religions, whatever, talk about that balance. You develop that ability to be balanced in such a way that you can tell the difference between beneficial and harmful. You can discern. Again, we're back to duality. The only way we can classify or clarify what you mean by discernment is the difference between 0 and 1, good and bad. That is the beginning of everything. You being able to define one from another.
Yeah. Or in modern day, bullshit or not.
Propaganda or not. You can't send your kids to school and teach them crap. No. Keep them at home and teach them good stuff like this.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was worth just putting up and having a, because sometimes we'll.
Yeah.
I'll stop that now. Sorry, I'll just go back to that.
Certainly in reference to like a lot of the stuff I was rambling about tonight is based on the media propaganda that the system, the usurpers, are deliberately putting out onto the public to try and influence the public's reactions so that they go in a certain direction that creates an illusion of consent and a change in the societal infrastructure that we're all sharing.
Yeah.
So they're not forcing you. They're not following behind you with a stick, beating you to go a certain direction. They're just putting out suggestions, but by using tangential means, they are influencing you to go one way or the other. So having that sense of self and balance and coordination within yourself of knowing that, yeah, I've got this physical body that has requirements that can become overly unbalanced. They can become gluttony, greed, lust, etc. But if I can manage those things and balance them, and then I can process further, and I can look at the information they're presenting to me and go, okay, I accept that bit, but the rest of this stuff, this is shit that I don't need to eat. I don't need this shit. I'm done processing this crap, thank you. Shit,
Oh,
that
this
out
is
of your
this is
spiritual arsehole.
and in the visual sense, and that what you're taking visually, you know, the TV's a pile of shit as well. You know, eventually people will, hopefully many people see that. I hope so now. You know, just what the drudge of sitting in that screen or that kind of programming, you know, I'd say the football and the soap operas, people were, you know, locked into that kind of, you know, mentality to a certain degree, you know, mentally. You know, it's taken up a lot of their, you know, time and stuff or whatever. But now they haven't had that, or it's come back slowly. But it's been a time where you can think, hang on a sec, I didn't really miss that much, you know, and I'm not that bothered. I mean, it's not like you're becoming a millionaire yourself, is it, or anything? You're just being, you know, it's like a magic spell, you know, just waving, you think, and you're just wasting your time with it, really, ultimately. Being distracted. Yeah, go on.
Look at the situation after was it Liverpool, I think?
Yeah,
football match,
yeah.
and then there was a big sort of street party celebration that got rather raucous, and many police were injured and shit like that. That's that externalization of processes that people should be doing for themselves without the need of an outside third party.
Exactly. So yeah.
They've gotten used to there being this external process method where they would be allowed or sanctioned to experience these emotions and vent them and participate in something that helped them feel like they were processing certain energetic experience through an external process via things like a football match, a support of a football team, you know, something external to themselves.
Yeah.
So because that had been taken away from them for however many months, many people had become clogged up, basically spiritually constipated, energetically constipated.
No outlet.
They had no outlet anymore. They didn't know how else to process the sense that they needed to fulfill, this sense of belonging to something, of putting their energy into supporting. So when it was suddenly given back to them, it's like they just took a load of laxatives and they just all out at once. Yeah. So they have to go out there and go, wow, crazy air. Yeah. That's how the system captures and manipulates people and puppeteers them, because they've persuaded a lot of people to put their processing into external things.
Yes. It's hard when you're born into it as well, when it's so full on and they so push these things throughout your life.
It's not just, I know, you know, sports and supporting sports teams and corporate sport bullshit. Yeah, it can be an easy target. It's low-hanging fruit.
It is, yeah. It is.
I think I was going to say all of us, for really.
I'm being cruel because my football team's doing shit. I hate football at the moment.
Yeah, but the majority of us have something similar.
Yeah, something I think there's nothing wrong with it per se, but how it was introduced into the system, into our societies as it was done in a very deliberate way to really distract us, to really take us down that path of total, like, it's more, football's, they say it's, more important than life and all this. These are the sort of phrases they use in the sport of how passionate it all is, and
it is something that I think I could easily digress into a very big subject matter or subject area.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, and it's like tend to now, so I'm not going to.
No, we're pushing
go
for time
far,
now.
But
Yeah.
Just to sort of point in that direction, to point down that rabbit tunnel, that rabbit hole tunnel. Yeah, this is all connected into the steady progress of the destruction of the family and the isolation of the individual, so that they can completely separate you from this physical experience and make you feel completely separated from it. So they're deliberately pushing that kind of entraining of the populace. And that's what I say. We've all had it in some form. For some people, it's sports teams. For other people, it's soap operas. For other people, it's certain kind of social activities, like going to a pub or something.
Yeah.
There's something that we all are, in our upbringing, we learn or we're taught to attach these processes to external things. The ultimate low-hanging fruit for that is that the consumerist system, stuff equals happiness. Yeah, the majority of us, it's certainly in the developed world, as they like to call it, have been entrained into this concept of objects, things that we buy in the system make us happy. And the only way we have happiness is by buying a product, or
yeah,
service.
it's very empty, really. In the end, it lasts for 5 minutes, and then the novelty's gone.
The next one.
Yeah.
When they bring out the latest version, you're willing to camp outside a shop for 3 days just so you could have that sense of fulfillment because you're the first person to buy it. It's like, oh my god,
that's the level it gets to. Yeah. That's how it works.
Having things that you enjoy. I don't want to totally crap all over
everything. Stuff. Sports shit, everything's crap.
We are here,
rubbish.
We're here having a physical experience, so there's stuff around us all the time. But the overemphasis on consumer products and things like that, shiny thing, make it all better, is a great way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, draw back. I mean, if people are getting too heavily. They did get really, distressed when they couldn't do the things they wanted to do during lockdown, and or they got through it. You got through it,
I thought the images of the beaches were great. I know that can put me in a certain sort of category of labels and whatever now.
But you could do without it, is what I'm trying to say. You could do without those things. They weren't there, and you did without them, and they were fine. So maybe people hopefully did take time to do that stuff I was talking about before with the chakras and looking at themselves or whatever, or dealing with stuff. And I think there's been a lot of people that I know, there's been a lot of things happening, clear out things, in relationships, everything, things are shifting, and it seems that people are moving into alignment correctly,
transition
in a way. They might not think it at the time, but they think fucking hell, but it's things are working out for people in a sense, and it might not seem it, but that's what this has created, and the backfiring process is taking place now, where lots of us on that beach, they're all awake on that beach. They're all fully on it. They know exactly what's going on. They know Bill Gates's little, they know the cabal. They know all the stuff.
Yeah,
the fucking Prince Andrew, Epstein, the fucking lot. They're all on that beach going bollocks to the fucking this shit. It's you know what I mean. They're just trying to have us off, and the vaccines, the lot. They know it all, and there they are having fun on the beach. Good luck to them. Wish I was there.
I was going to say a similar kind of thing, not exactly an anecdote, but just like recent experiences over the past now at least 2 to 3 months of talking to some people who in time previous to that may have thought I'm just, as in reference to me, I'm just a tinfoil hat person who talks weirdness and crazy conspiracy theories and silliness and whatever. And now they're sort of like, they're looking at the news and they're looking at me and they're looking at the news, they're looking at me and they're like, shit, right, okay, most of the stuff you've been telling me, I got to sit and think about that a bit more, because now there's all this shit just piling up and I'm starting to see it. So that great awakening process is beginning.
New being
kicked into gear for a lot of people, yeah. And now, even though we're having to go through a lot of shit, and I'm not trying to downplay it, because I know for quite a few people out there, they've been going through some really bad stuff, yeah. Some people have died, some people have lost their homes, their businesses, everything, yeah. It's not joking when talking about how this has been heavily destructive for a lot of the population. But going through that shit has created this opportunity for a lot of people. Now they can look at the system for what it is, and they can get past. It's like this is why I like using the reference of the Father Christmas example. Yeah, it's like when a child gets to the age where they realise that Father Christmas isn't actually real, like a physical guy who turns up at their house and with a sack full of presents and all that kind of delusion. We're going through the same kind of thing spiritually, energetically. The mass of the population is suddenly starting to realise, they're starting to wake up to the reality that they were tricked in some manner by the system to make them think that things were a certain way, that life was a certain way, whereas in reality it's not at all. And they're starting to break out of the illusion. And that's why, like you said, some people have a bit of a freak out in that first experience.
Yeah.
You can become a bit evangelical. I know I did. I wanted to tell everyone, like, look at this, look at this, look at that, read this, watch this documentary, do something. Yeah, that's that initial burst of energy. But then you start to find your pace.
Yes.
And as long as you don't turn away from it, as long as you don't get scared and go back on yourself, you just find your pace and you keep steady going. It's not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is the marathon.
Yeah. I think Nubian was asking in the chat, when was that image taken? I think that's Thursday, isn't it? When we had 30 degrees, is it?
I think so.
Bournemouth,
Yeah.
Bournemouth? Is that
yeah.
Bournemouth? Is it Bournemouth?
Yeah, it was from the Telegraph article.
Yeah.
It was, I think, Thursday.
The 25th, that would have been.
Yeah, we had an amazing heat wave.
We did.
Those 3 days. It was fantastic here. It was lovely.
Thursday, it was, I ended up going up, well, I didn't go all the way up to a mountain, just a mini mountain. I went to the first level. It was too hot. The wrong day to do it. It was mega hot. It was like 30 degrees here anyway, which is,
I did enjoy but the heat is a bit difficult for me because it saps my breathing really heavy. But I'd still, hopefully that's not all we have of summer this year.
Well,
you never know in the British Isles. Sometimes that's all you get. You get a week of sun, and then that's it for the rest of the year.
And then since it's here it was Saturday, Sunday, and today it's been horrible. It's just grey, dark, and shit. So yeah, but like I say, Cookie, I hope we haven't put the spell on it. We will get summer. Summer is coming back. They did tell us in the Daily Telegraph or somewhere like that. Summer's coming. So
maybe
it must be.
I was just thinking about it from the perspective of, like we were talking about earlier, the difference between the physical going downwards and the spiritual or energetic going upwards or whatever. Maybe if they say, we're going to have a summer, maybe it's that summer of the soul, the spiritual summer that's occurring, the brightening of all those people so that they can see what's actually going on around them, rather than being kept in the dark and fed shit like mushrooms. Getting out and getting some sun, give you some vitamin D, help your biology, help your psychology as well, because they're interrelated. So that's why I like it. That made me happy, seeing the fact that people had gone out to the beach en masse. Apart from, like I mentioned earlier, all the litter and whatever. But even so, it's just the fact that knowing, as you said earlier, a good portion of the people in that crowd were probably quite aware of a lot of the crap that's going on. They weren't wearing masks. I saw hardly any masks in the pictures. Most people were just there mingling on the beach.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
That to me is a demonstration of, yes, there are a lot of people out there that are not succumbing to the fear and the propaganda and the bullshit, the lies, the deception, the scamdemic, etc. Because when you look at the media, like the media tried to label that as the Armageddon, major incident. Whereas, yeah, the media is presenting us with fear, be afraid, terror, it's under your bed, it's going to get you. Oh. Nah,
Mhm.
get out to the beach and have some fun and some sunshine. So, yeah, it's just ticked up to the hour, so I'm going to call it there and say thank you very much. Thanks, folks, for joining in and
Thanks,
listening.
Cookie. Cheers in the chat as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for everyone in the chat. I'm sorry, I do my usual. I haven't really read much of it. I've been a quick look now and then. But thanks to everyone that's joining in. Hopefully you've been nice to each other. I will read back through the chat like I usually do after the fact, either later tonight or tomorrow. But at some point I'll read through it. And thanks to all those time travelers who are watching after the live broadcast. And we will be back again on Wednesday night on the Reality Chat channel. That's the Reality Chat channel that Pete hosts for the Reality Chat at 8 p.m. GMT. That's UK time. And Steve Tagusi's on Thursday night with the Mystery Show at 8 p.m. I know I mentioned him earlier. He was in the chat earlier if you want to get the link. Oh, of course you can't do that anymore, can you? Google changed it. You can't click on people's names, but you can see his name and type it in the search box if you need to. But you can always check my liked videos playlist as well. You'll find his videos in there as well. And thanks again for everybody giving us your attention for a couple of hours or so. Don't believe all the bullshit, please. Don't fall for the hype. And we are still progressing through this shit. We'll keep pointing at their bullshit and calling it out as and when we can. And we'll be back again soon. Be careful, everyone. And, wear knickers on your head and tell everyone that's your mask. Oh, man. Yeah, hopefully it becomes a trend. I'm going to laugh my tits off if I see people walking around wearing knickers on their head. That's going to be cool. Yeah, anyway. Thanks again.
Cheers.
Click the button. Cut
Thank
cheese.